Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into one of those battles that just, well, it captures the imagination, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The Battle of Little Bighorn. It's practically woven into American history.
Yeah, and everyone thinks they know the story, Custer's last stand and all that,
Mm.
but we're going to find out what really happened on that day, June 25th, 1876.
Yeah, peel back those layers. We're going to look at the decisions, the motivations, everything that led up to this clash.
So, picture this. It's June of 1876,
Yeah.
and we're on the banks of the Little Bighorn River, Montana Territory.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, and right there's this sprawling village, thousands of Lakota and Cheyenne people.
Largest gathering ever seen on the Great Plains. Something like what, 7,000 to 8,000 people?
Wow.
And it's not just a gathering, it's a celebration.
Oh.
Yeah, they're coming off a victory.
You guys take check.
General Crook at the Battle of the Rosebud.
Oh, right.
Crazy Horse led that one. So there's laughter, singing, dancing, kids running around, a real scene of, vibrant life.
Hard to imagine that this is all about to change so drastically.
No.
I mean, the U.S. Army's on its way.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but it wasn't just like a camp of hostiles, like how they were often portrayed.
Right.
You had families there who'd actually signed treaties with the government. They were living peacefully on reservations.
So this President Grant peace policy, it backfired a bit.
It did. It had these, unintended consequences. It kind of forced the treaty and the non-treaty Indians together. And that created this mix of resistance,
Resentment.
a powder keg.
Exactly.
So you've got the celebration, but there's also this feeling of unease. I mean, wasn't Sitting Bull having premonitions?
He was the spiritual leader of the Lakota, and he'd been having these visions of soldiers, these warnings of danger.
Wow.
So he climbs this hill and prays for protection, senses a storm coming, literally and figuratively.
And while this is happening, over 200 miles away, you've got Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer leading the 7th Cavalry. Ah, Custer. Now, there was a man who knew how to make an entrance.
Oh, definitely. Already a legend in his own time. Daring, flamboyant. He was kind of like the rock star of the military.
He was, but also ambitious.
Driven.
Oh, yeah. He wanted that decisive victory, the kind that would cement his place in history, maybe even launch him to the White House.
Who knows, right?
And there was pressure, too, a big pressure. The nation, they'd had enough of these costly conflicts with the Native Americans. They wanted a resolution. Custer, he was seen as the man to get it done.
But his approach to the Little Bighorn, it wasn't exactly, a victory march. They were exhausted.
Yeah.
Weeks of marching, supplies low, morale probably not great.
Not at all. And there were, red flags along the way. Well, they had Crow Scouts with them, Arikar Scouts, too, allies of the Army, and they reported seeing this massive village.
Bigger than they expected.
Way bigger. They warned Custer, told him to be careful, but he was determined.
Like he had blinders on?
It's almost like, he was so focused on this big victory, he couldn't or wouldn't see the danger.
And then on top of that, he decides to divide his forces.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Right. I mean, he's already facing what could be a huge enemy force, and he splits his men. Why?
Some historians say it was overconfidence, a classic blunder. Others say, well, maybe he felt he don't have a choice. Maybe he thought he needed to stop the village from scattering.
So many theories.
Yeah, we may never know for sure.
But whatever the reason, it proved to be a fatal decision. He splits his 660 men into 3 battalions.
Reno,
Yeah.
and Pentine, and Custer himself.
Setting the stage for,
And even his own scouts. They begged him not to do it. Mitch Beyer, a Crow Scout, reportedly told Custer, he said, "General, I've been with these Indians. You go in there, you will be killed."
I mean, how do you ignore that?
Right. But Custer, he was never one to back down from a challenge. He truly believed he could achieve a quick victory, grab the glory.
And so, on June 25th, the sun is beating down on the Little Bighorn Valley, and Custer and his men, they're riding towards their destiny.
And the first clash comes when Reno, following Custer's orders, attacks the southern end of the village.
Yeah, Reno, he was a good officer.
He was capable, yeah, but he also, he liked his whiskey. And he had a tendency to, shall we say, lose his composure under pressure.
Right.
And as Reno's men get closer to the village, they run into a wall of Lakota and Cheyenne warriors.
Fierce fighters.
Oh, yeah. And they hit Reno's men hard. Reno, he panics. orders his men to dismount, form a skirmish line.
Bad move.
It was. That skirmish line, it crumbles almost instantly. The Lakota and Cheyenne, they're fighting like demons, using the terrain, outmaneuvering Reno's troops at every turn.
And Reno.
He sees his men falling, he completely loses it. Orders a retreat back across the little Bighorn River.
Leaving behind.
Dead, wounded. It was a complete disaster. A really bad start for the 7th Cavalry.
And that's just the beginning. We'll be back next time to delve into the mystery, the mayhem of Custer's last stand.
Stay tuned. It's about to get intense.
So we left off with Reno and his men in full retreat across the Little Bighorn. What's Custer doing during all this?
Well, he's still in the dark about what's happening with Reno. He thinks everything is going according to plan, that Reno's engaging the enemy. And he's moving toward the village, convinced that his battalion, his part of the 7th, will be the one to deal the final blow.
That's a pretty big assumption to make.
Oh, definitely. And to add to it, he sends a message back to Captain Benteen, who's with the 3rd Battalion, tells him to hurry up and bring the pack train, with the extra ammunition.
That message, Benteen, come on, big village, be quick, bring packs. It's almost iconic, isn't it?
It really is. It's like, well, it captures that whole moment, Custer's confidence, his sense of urgency, but also that complete lack of awareness about the danger he's in.
It makes you wonder, what if he had waited for Benteen? Would things have been different?
It's one of those big what-ifs of history. Could have changed the course of the battle completely if he had just kept his forces together, listened to his scouts.
But he didn't.
No, he didn't. And as he's getting closer to the village, he makes another decision that, well, it has some serious consequences.
What's that?
He splits his forces again, sends a small detachment under Captain Miles Keogh to scout the southern end of the village.
He's already outnumbered, and he keeps dividing his men.
It's a move that's baffled historians for years. Some argue it was just pure arrogance. Others say maybe desperation was starting to set in. Whatever the reason, it didn't end well.
It's like he was almost inviting disaster, wasn't he?
It's hard to look at it any other way. I mean, here's Custer, this brilliant tactician, known for risky moves, bold attacks. But at Little Bighorn, it's like his judgment just vanished.
So as Custer's men are advancing, they start to encounter more and more resistance from the Lakota and Cheyenne.
Oh, yeah. The warriors, they know what's up now. They're using the terrain to their advantage. Hiding in ravines, behind hills, they're launching these surprise attacks, picking off Custer's men.
And wasn't Crazy Horse a major factor in all of this?
Oh, absolutely. He was a warrior unlike any other, fierce, inspiring, and a brilliant strategist. He led charge after charge against Custer's men, just disrupting their formations, causing chaos.
So Custer's plan, whatever it was at that point, it's falling apart.
Completely. Outnumbered, outmaneuvered. His men, you got to imagine, they're starting to panic.
And at some point, Custer must have realized that things were going very, very wrong.
He tries to regroup, find a defensive position on a hilltop. It'll later become known as Custer Hill, but it's too little, too late.
The Lakota and Cheyenne, they see victory within reach.
And they don't let up. They swarm Custer Hill, overpower the soldiers. Custer and all the men with him, they're killed.
No survivors.
None from Custer's battalion. What happened in those final moments? Well, we only have fragments from the Lakota and Cheyenne accounts. But one thing's for sure, it was brutal. Chaotic.
Their bodies were found all over the hillside, right?
Scattered. Riddled with bullets and arrows. The archaeological evidence, it paints a grim picture. They fought bravely, but they were just overwhelmed.
Custer's last stand. It's become this symbol of so many things. Courage, folly, the cost of war, the power of resistance.
It's a story that continues to fascinate and haunt us.
It's easy to get caught up in Custer's story, that last stand, but we can't forget about the rest of the 7th Cavalry. What about Reno and his men? They were still out there, weren't they?
Oh, yeah. While all that was happening with Custer, Reno, and his men, they were fighting for their lives on a hilltop that later be called Reno Hill.
They managed to dig in after that initial retreat.
They did, but they were surrounded, outnumbered, running low on ammunition. Lakota and Cheyenne warriors just kept coming at them, wave after wave.
Must have been terrifying. Knowing what we know now, did they even have any idea what happened to Custer?
No, they were completely cut off. They could hear the fighting, but they had no way of knowing what was going on over there. They were just focused on surviving.
So how did they hold out? Against those odds, it seems almost impossible.
Well, remember Captain Benteen, the one Custer sent that message to?
Right.
He eventually made it to Reno Hill with his battalion and the pack train.
Just in time, I imagine.
You could say that. It was a huge morale boost for Reno's men, that's for sure.
Still, though, they were facing a massive force. How'd they manage to hold them off for so long?
Well, Benteen, he was a good leader, experienced.
Yeah.
He took charge, got everyone organized, rallied the troops. They used whatever they could find to build these makeshift fortifications. Anything, really. Dead horses, pack saddles, anything for cover. They fought like hell. For 2 days.
2 days?
2 days and nights. Under constant attack. You can't even imagine the exhaustion, the fear those men must have felt.
And then the Lakota and Cheyenne warriors, they just, what? They just withdrew. Why?
Well, it wasn't a defeat for the 7th Cavalry. Not exactly. The Native American leaders, they knew that General Terry was on his way with reinforcements, a much larger force.
So they made a strategic decision.
Exactly. They decided to pull back, move their village to a safer location.
It wasn't a surrender, more like a tactical retreat.
Right. It gave the 7th Cavalry a chance to, catch their breath, assess the damage.
Which was, I imagine, pretty extensive. How did the news of Custer's defeat hit the nation?
Hard. It was a shock, a national trauma, you could say. It became this symbol, Native American resistance, the arrogance of the U.S. Army.
And it fueled the fire, didn't it? For revenge.
It did. Led to even more conflict and escalation of the Indian Wars.
It's hard to look back at it now and, well, it's hard to reconcile those events with our modern understanding.
It's complicated, that's for sure.
And Custer himself, how do we view him today? Hero, villain.
That's a tough one. He was brave, no doubt, charismatic. But his decisions at Little Bighorn, well, they were disastrous. He underestimated his enemy, ignored warnings.
Some say he was reckless.
A glory seeker. Others, they say he was a victim of circumstance, a good commander in an impossible situation.
It's amazing how a single battle can be seen in so many different ways.
It reminds us that history isn't simple. There's always more than one side to the story, more to learn.
And that's what we're all about, right? Exploring, asking questions, even when it's difficult. Trying to understand the past, even the darkest chapters.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd say we did a pretty deep dive on this one. Went beyond the myths, the legends, explored the human side of the Battle of Little Bighorn.
And I hope it encourages people to learn more, to dig deeper into this part of history.
It's a story that deserves to be told.
Yeah.
And retold. Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone.